Is it possible for a white guy to define racism? Yeah, I've got these things called dictionaries here, and I know how to read. And it's sad that we even have to ever consider asking that question, because in general, I think everybody, especially in a hypothetically free country, should be able to talk about any subject, especially if they want to keep living in that society and interacting with others. So let's just start here. I always like to start with a modern dictionary. Now, this dictionary is not my favorite. It's thinned out, kind of dumbed down, made casual, and doesn't have the amount of information as other dictionaries in the past. But it's fair to say, with a word such as racism, that has possibly been thought of differently at different times in history, that maybe the modern dictionary will provide us more. I don't know. In any case, racism. The belief that all members of each race possess characteristics, abilities, or qualities specific to that race, especially so as to distinguish it as inferior or superior to another race or races. Prejudice, discrimination, antagonism directed against someone of a different race based on such a belief. A program to combat racism. Okay, that was an example. You know, that's interesting. And a racist is a person who believes that a particular race is superior to another. I have to ask this question. Wouldn't that make the entire NBA and NFL racist then? Or is that those athletes are just objectively better? But if we notice that, does that make somebody racist? Or is it possible that people from different parts of the world are actually better at certain things than others? I don't know. We're going to have to pose those questions and keep going. But it's a funny thing I thought of here. Race. Let's read the definition of race and have a little comical relief, Casey. Yes. A competition between runners, horses, and vehicles to see which is the fastest in covering a set course. Ha. So if you are a person that enjoys racing or going to a race, does that in fact make you a racist? It may not be as funny as I think it is, but it actually is an Instagram joke that's been floating around and sent to me by some of my black friends who thought it was hilarious. So I'm going to give myself an honorary pass. Let's go back to 1859 and look up racism. Now, this is going to be fascinating. As you all know, at that time of our history in the United States, well, we had the Civil War. And contrary to popular belief, the idea of slaves was not the only issue with the Civil War. The other thing is, you should really look up and see which political party was more in favor of slavery, Democrats or Republicans. I think that may surprise a lot of you. In any case, let's look up racism from 1859. Now we've got race here, and then ism would come afterward. But I can tell you this, the word racism either did not exist or was not acknowledged in 1859. Hold on to everybody that immediately wants to get triggered and chalk this up to the religion of racism. That doesn't mean that it was kept out by people writing the dictionary. It most likely means that that word was not a thing back then. So I think with this, I got to kind of explain this a little, because I did read these to some extent beforehand. And I kind of thought that word wasn't going to exist back then. In the 19th century, the 1800s, I'm going to tell you before, a lot of people didn't like other people all around the world. Every group of person or persons hated at least one other group of person or persons because of their culture. They didn't mix. For whatever reason, it was some sort of attack. Maybe they were being taken advantage of and hated some others. Maybe they were the ones taking advantage of and hated those. People just didn't like each other. I don't know if the word asshole is in that old dictionary, but back then, if you didn't like a bunch of people, or you didn't like somebody for reasons that were superfluous or stupid, you were probably just an asshole. But let's move on. Yes, Webster's New International Dictionary from 1911, before the outbreak of World War I. All right, so slavery is not a thing in America anymore. Here we are. Now, there are a lot of definitions for the word race. I'm not going to go in that now because we're sticking with racism. Spoiler, you guys, the word does not exist. It's just not here. The word racial is here now, where it wasn't in 1859, of or pertaining to a race or family of men. Men being all of mankind. No, it's just not here. Okay, we're going to move on. I got nothing for you. 1911 also wasn't a thing. We're going into the 50s. We're after World War II, civil rights, things are happening. Is it a thing? This is where it's going to get interesting, you guys. Got it. Here we go. So as an example, race is in here, racial is in here, racist is not in here. However, racialist is in here, which I think is simply a rudimentary beginning of the word racist. Racialist. So racialist, one promoting or animated by racialism, especially one who maintains that some races are inherently superior to others. And racialism, racial characteristics, tendencies, prejudices, or the like. Now that's interesting. Okay. Racial characteristics, tendencies, prejudices, or the like. Okay, so we've got it here. Racialism, which was shortened to racism at some point. That's where they say prejudices. And that's what is the focus of all the bane in the United States today and the world over. This is a huge world topic, shall we say, now. But it's interesting to me that in the mid-1950s that it simply wasn't to be racist yet. There's racialist and racialism. Effectively the same thing. So let's move on. The next dictionary. Webster's third New International Dictionary. You know, it makes a lot of sense to me reading this now that racism isn't specifically it, because since the definition of race is so big with so many different definitions, that's where I think the jokes on Instagram to be a racist, if you're into racing, like car racing or motorcycle racing, came from. And actually, I think that was originally posted. There was an Indian guy who posted a video about a motorcycle. And it was something like, life is short, be a racist. But it was in reference to racing, as in motorcycles or such. It's possible I got that wrong, because you guys know how things get mixed up on the internet. But that's what I saw, and that's what my black friends thought were hilarious. They were in the cars. And then, oh, hey, racist is here. Racist, one who advocates or believes in racism. And racism is here. The assumption that psychocultural traits and capacities are determined by biological race, and that races differ decisively from one another, which is coupled with a belief in the inherent superiority of a particular race and its right to domination over others. That's a lot packed into a definition. A doctrine or political program based on the assumption of racism and designed to execute its principles. A political or social system founded on racism. Ooh. This is going to get me into trouble. Well, here we go. Okay, so let's break it down. The assumption that psychocultural traits and capacities are determined by biological race, and that races differ decisively from one another, which is usually coupled with a belief in the inherent superiority of a particular race and its right to domination over others. Well, let's be honest. You got to be nuts not to look out there and see that there are certain things that different races are more into than others. Why that could be, I don't know. But I can tell you that I never see any diversity, equity, or inclusion things happening to try to put more white people into basketball or professional football. Why is that? Which then leads to going, why are we trying to stick diversity in so many other places? Why don't we just let people do what they do? Oh, because apparently everything has been racist in the past, so what we need to do now is be nouveau racist and try to make things better. Okay, I'm pretty sure that's what that is. Let me go on to the next one. 2, a doctrine or political program based on the assumption of racism and designed to execute its principles. So, when our current president has made some new rules or laws where if a person of a certain race commits a crime toward another, but if another person from a different race commits a crime toward another race, it's only a hate crime if it's certain races? Let me reread that again. A doctrine or political program based on the assumption of racism and designed to execute its principles. Wouldn't it be fair to say that our current president and direction with making hate crimes only exist if you're a particular race, or maybe just a couple of races, is in fact racism? Because the dictionary says it is right here. Okay, let me go on to the third one. Yes, this is B. This is B, the second of that. A political or social system founded on racism. I mean, I have to point this out because it's true. Isn't by definition affirmative action racism? And we all know the answer to that is yes. Period. So I have a question. So here's the question we got to ask. I think, when you look at all this. What amount of racism is acceptable? And is it fair to say that literally all of the United States and all of us here are racist? And then also, isn't it fair to say the entire world is racist? I'd have to say the answer to that is yes. Because, let's be honest, we celebrate the differences of race in this country. We do. We do. Whether it's in a positive way, like everybody's so excited when I was growing up. I mean, Michael Jordan, dude is awesome. He is a strong public figure as an African American. Super cool. And me, as a nerdy white kid, I thought he was great. Wore shoes when I was in 6th grade. Looked like a dork, mostly because of me, not the shoes, but that was that, right? So if I think him and a bunch of other basketball players that are white are a lot cooler than Larry Bird, does that make me racist towards white people? Or racist and positive for black people? Technically, yes. Yes, it does. So if I decided that, let's say all white people are bad and have oppressed everybody else, and I want to make it so that it's easier for everybody who isn't white to do something, which in turn makes it harder for white people to do anything, is that not inherently racist? By definition, yes, it absolutely is. So I guess the biggest question is, when you look at the United States and world, is how do you not be technically racist in some way, shape, and form? And I mean that of everybody, not just white. Like, I know you guys want to attack me right now for being white and sitting here with the American flag and like some nice cars in my garage. But I'm asking that for everybody. Because after reading these dictionaries, a couple of things are evident. One, the word wasn't even a thing in the 1800s and before. Because if you were an asshole, you were an asshole. And there could be a million reasons to be an asshole. But it's amazing nowadays, we come up with all the flavors for being an asshole. And the word specifically racism didn't even come out until the second half of the 20th century. I think Morgan Freeman said it best. And I think it was it 60 Minutes interview? And they asked him, how do you end racism? And he said, stop talking about it.
I don't want a Black History Month. Black history is American history.
How are we going to get rid of racism until...
Stop talking about it.
And he said, we got a Black History Month. And he looked at the interviewer and said, when's White History Month? And he goes, oh, I'm Jewish.
Which month is White History Month? No, come on, tell me.
Well, I'm Jewish.
First of all, that he's dodging. But Morgan Freeman said he didn't like it. He said, stop talking about it. And I guess I can only speak for myself here in observation or reading dictionaries and doing things. I can't say that I've had the lives of anybody else out there or felt the specific feelings that anybody else had. And to be perfectly honest, at one time in my life, I really did think that there were people being racist towards my organization, A Genius Garage, because I was the only one out there helping and bringing out people of color. I put it that way because they were of various colors. They weren't just African American, and different sexes. And I frankly thought they were kind of discriminating towards us being. However, in looking at it in the past, now, honestly, they were just assholes. But I was trying to find a reason why people were assholes. And at the time, that seemed like a pretty good explanation. But afterward, turns out they're just assholes. They weren't racist. Or at least in that circumstance. So I guess I pose the question, because by dictionary standards, the last 160 plus years, it seems that everybody, literally, in the United States is racist in some way, shape, or form. Is that acceptable? Is it not acceptable? Is it normal? Is that basic humanity? Do we need to calm down? And was Morgan Freeman right? If we want to end racism in America, should we just stop talking about it? See you guys next time.